everybody. Mara here. Before I get started with the episode, the drivers that I updated on my camera really distorted like the window here, and they made the frame rate really bad, like 12 frames a second. But I can't really re-record it right now because my throat's really sore, and I think I at least brought up really good points and got the message across really well. So, just the video quality's a little low, and I wanted to warn you. That's all. Hello there, Mara here again. Okay, so my camera just reinstalled its drivers and did some weird things. So if you're wondering why some of my room looks a little curvy, I don't know what's going on with it. I don't know why I decided to do that, but anyways, it's distracting me. I don't know if anybody else even notices. Okay, so aside from this introduction, because we're going to be talking about training your voice today, I'm going to change to a more standard masculine voice and only speak using the lessons I've gone through so far in the episode. I'm not bored or tired or sick, which I'll explain later. There's a reason for what I'm doing. Before I begin, I'm not a professional. I've been doing voice acting non-professionally for over 40 years, however, and I've learned all sorts of ways of talking in that time. I've decided to create this video as a very different perspective on this topic, as it seems there's so many other videos that already exist for it. This is specifically to help trans femme people learn to speak more like a cis woman, or with a bit of practice, indistinguishable from them. The techniques for trans men to get a more masculine voice are quite a bit different, especially since their voice often may naturally get deeper from taking testosterone, though I have helped a few cis women be able to achieve a decent male voice, at least for role-playing purposes. I talked to a professional voice therapist about my new voice to double-check that I'm not going to be guiding anybody down the wrong path. I actually passed with flying colors. What you see here is her report. Though a lot of this is presentation-based as opposed to voice, which was unexpected. So there are technically 4 registers, or basic types of sounds, we can use while speaking, but we're only going to be talking about and using what's called a modal voice, or normal voice. However, for sake of completion, I will mention the others. The lowest register is called vocal fry, and is characterized by a crackling or cracking kind of quality to it. It sounds creaky. I don't use it much, but some people can do neat things with it. A little higher is the one we care about, modal or normal voice, which is where most speech comes from. Higher still is falsetto, which often sounds Mickey Mouse-ish, especially if you do it like this, hee hee. We're not going to be using a falsetto, as a lot of trans women try to do, since it does make it easier to hit the right pitches, but it also tends to sound very artificial when you use it as your speaking voice. And the highest register is called whistle, which I never use, so it sounds terrible when I use it, especially to talk, but here goes. Hi there, this is the whistle register. Yeah, oof. Not my thing, as you can tell. I'm going to go through 3 topics I feel are key to being able to help have a feminine voice, in order of most important to least important, as well as talk about a few other extra things that you can try out that you may or may not even care about, but are extra little subtle things that can help you, especially since you're going to be working on a new voice. If anybody feels I should elaborate more on anything, I can make longer, more detailed videos about specific subjects, because I could probably spend quite a lot of time explaining and demonstrating each of them. If you do follow along, be certain you know your limits here. Get some water to drink before getting started. I've got mine. I'm going to be drinking a lot. Be sure you drink plenty of water. You want your throat to be comfortable and not dry. If you start feeling pain in your throat, please stop. Maybe have a lozenge and let your voice rest. It may even take a day or 2 before it feels better. This takes a long time to get comfortable with, potentially months or even years, especially working on pitch. I wish there was an easy way to do this. I also highly recommend, while you're going through this process, that you record yourself trying things. It's useful to have something identical to read along the way, maybe a paragraph long, to make it easier to compare from one to the other. This is especially important because once we add head resonance, the voice you hear in your head is going to be a lot different than what other people hear. The resonance and vibration is going to be very close to your own ears, making your actual projected voice sound very different than what you hear. And don't forget to save these voice samples on occasion, especially when you think you're doing well, so you can track your progress later on. I feel like a dork. I've been talking with my tooth aligners in, and I'm sitting here trying to talk about voice. So, obviously, my voice is being modified by these darn things, straightening my messed up teeth up, but giving me a little bit of a lisp. Okay. Now we can start correctly. I feel silly. I believe the most important part of having a passing voice is learning to change your resonance, and you can learn how to use it fairly quickly. Done correctly, even with a somewhat deep voice, this should get you very quickly close to having a feminine sounding voice. There are actually a lot of cis women with deeper voices, but they still have the same sort of resonance that most women have, which gives them a feminine sounding voice. I like to use Caitlin Doughty of Ask a Mortician as an example, because she somewhat exaggerates it while telling her stories. It sounds fairly deep, and nobody would mistake her voice for a man's voice.
It was a dark and stormy day when we arrived at Lake Superior. When you were a kid, and your parents would make you go spend a week with your aunt and cousin Kevin, and you hated it because Kevin was just so boring.
So almost all men speak using mostly chest resonance, and almost all women speak using mostly head resonance. In simple terms, it's which part of you that you're using to help amplify your voice. The easiest way to experience it is to imagine how air flows through your vocal cords, your mouth, and your nose as you speak. Chest resonance feels like you're using the lower part of your voice box, or maybe even all of it, to speak. And head resonance is going through your nasal cavity a bit. For me, the easiest way to think of controlling it is done in 2 steps. Change from having the airflow going straight through your mouth as you speak to adding a bit of a bend to the airflow so that some of it goes through your nose while pinching the resonance in your lower voice box. Once you learn how to do this, you can control both of them separately as well, but for our purposes, we're just going to be doing this in 2 steps. And don't cut both off, or you'll sound wispy or even sickly, even though it does make for an amusing voice at times. So step 1, switch your airflow when you speak to have your head resonate. I think of this as changing airflow from going straight out my mouth, like I'm doing right now, to coming out at an upward angle at the back of my throat. You can hear the difference as I slide it a little bit back from where I'm angling the sound coming out of my mouth as I'm speaking. You can control how heavy this is by angling the air more forward or back in your throat and through your nasal cavities. Hear that change in voice quality? Try to find a point that I think of as about a quarter of the way through. It sounds about like this. If you can say a few sentences this way, but see if you could say a few sentences this way, it probably sounds a bit strong because we're still using chest resonance. At the same time, it's not going to sound quite right. We've got more work to do. Step 2, cut off your chest resonance. I wish I could explain this better, but it feels like I'm not going to be using the lower half of my voice box at all. The air just flows through it and it doesn't vibrate anything. And you can actually feel the difference between when you are doing it. You could feel the vibration here in your chest. And when you start cutting it off, it's mostly gone and you don't really feel it that much anymore. A lot of deeper undertones in your voice will be cut off this way and may come across as using even higher pitch, even if you aren't actually. This combination may take some getting used to, but some people, and this is where water comes in again, some people learn how to do this quickly and get pretty decent results with it right away. Unless your voice is very deep, this combination that I'm doing right now may sound pretty good already, especially if you want a more sultry sounding voice. Don't forget to record yourself as you work through this, so you can make certain you aren't sounding too cartoony while you're doing it, which is easy to do if you aren't used to doing it. Once you start using head resonance, what you hear in your head will sound very different from what everybody else hears, so this is really important. The second big deal is pitch. This is the hard one. This was the hard one for me, and I've been doing this sort of thing for most of my life. It took me about 6 months to be comfortable with the new pitch range that I use all of the time, except when I'm doing voices. I can't imagine how hard it is for someone that hasn't done this sort of thing on the regular. Expect that this will take you months and months to get nailed down. Work on other steps of this process while you're training your voice to be higher pitch so it all becomes more natural to you. In general, cis women have a voice that's a fundamental pitch that's about twice the frequency as cis men, or an octave higher. When you first start, don't jump up a full octave unless you sing regularly in a higher register already. You won't have to reach your ideal pitch right away. The process of reaching where you want to is actually working on muscles in your throat, especially your upper larynx, and also training yourself to speak differently. This is where you can easily hurt your throat if you push too hard, so let's start simple. Remember to keep the head resonance we talked about before. Assuming the voice I've been using is my starting point, let's go up a little bit, and then start using that as our new base. You will want to try using this constantly, as much as you can, for whatever you can talk about. This pitch change is pretty minor, but after using it for a couple hours, you will likely start feeling your throat getting maybe a little tight or even tired. If you start feeling tired, my voice cracked. It's going to happen a little. If you start feeling tired, drink some more liquids and take a break by switching back to a more comfortable pitch. If it keeps bothering you after an hour or so, you might want to stop for a day or two. After possibly days or weeks of doing this, where you start to feel more and more comfortable and it starts feeling more natural, then we need to move up a little bit more. I've only moved up a little bit here, and it's starting to sound kind of androgynous, except the head resonance, of course. If that's what you want, great. You can stop there. Honestly, you can keep working on it. Otherwise, we want to move up a bit more for a more feminine sound. Do the same thing again. Raise your pitch a bit further. Talk a lot with it. The further we go, the longer, though, it might take to make it feel more natural. I did this in 2 stages when I was working on my new voice, because I had a lot of practice doing it already. The first stage, I emulated a higher pitch by pinching my voice down a lot, like this. Don't do that. This was a big mistake, as it started to cause my throat a lot of aggravation. It dries it out really, really fast. Just some good old resonance and a higher pitch is what I switched to, and then gradually increased the pitch as I felt more comfortable, felt more and more comfortable. Eventually, after using my new voice for a while, there was this point where almost everything felt a little tiring to do, except specifically at the higher pitch where I was working on my new voice. This was a bit confusing at first, but it's actually exactly where you want to be. You can use this new voice to feel you want this new voice to feel comfortable, and if it feels more comfortable than your old voice, good. When I switch back to my old voice, it actually strains my throat a little bit lower than where it strained my throat when I was practicing. If you can get yourself to that point, good, because that means that your throat is becoming more comfortable with the new pitch. Be sure, like I've said before, that you record yourself on occasion. It helps you realize how far you've come. When you can play audio of your old voice and then your early pitch work voice, then listen to all of the updates you've been doing. It helps you feel your progression, even if it is taking quite some time. Good luck here. This is the part that's hard for a lot of people, and if I need to elaborate more on this, please let me know. You're going to be doing a lot of practice here. It's the slow part of voice training, and I really wish there was an easier way to do it. But practice. It needs a lot of practice. A much smaller detail, but still a key part of a good feminine voice, is pitch fluctuation. In general, men fluctuate their pitch a lot less than women do. Some people won't pick up on this detail, but to some people, it can make you come off as artificial. Without it, especially using a feminine pitched voice, it can make you sound bored, uninterested, or tired. I'm also not that great at it, and it bothers my throat, but I'll persevere. Now, a lot of trans women may already be doing a lot of pitch fluctuation without even realizing it, in which case, if you are, great, you can probably skip this step or you won't have much work to do. So how do we fix it if we don't have much fluctuation in our speech? Well, just fluctuate your pitches more. Emphasize the ups and downs in your speech and conversation. Try to use about double the fluctuation or range that you've been using when you're talking. The easiest example I can think of this is like how a Valley girl talks. Like, oh my God, whatever you do, do not do this for like extended amounts of time other than for laughs, because it can get really annoying, girl. Hey, Lavana. So pitch fluctuation in particular shows up really well when you're just reading a simple paragraph. It really makes it stand out. I'm going to read just part of the Vimes Boots theory to make the change really clear. The following is being done with a lower amount of pitch fluctuation. The reason that the rich were so rich, Vimes reasoned, was because they managed to spend less money. Take Boots, for example. He earned $38 a month plus allowances. A really good pair of leather boots cost $50, but an affordable pair of boots, which were sort of okay for a season or two and then leaked like hell when the cardboard gave out, cost about $10. Those were the kinds of boots Vimes always bought and wore until the soles were so thin that he could tell where he was in Ankh-Morpork on a foggy night by the feel of the cobbles. And the following is the same thing said with a generally more feminine pitch fluctuation. The reason that the rich were so rich, Vimes reasoned, was because they managed to spend less money. Take Boots, for example. He earned $38 a month plus allowances. A really good pair of leather boots cost $50. But an affordable pair of boots, which were sort of okay for a season or two and then leaked like hell when the cardboard gave out, cost about $10. Those were the kind of boots that Vimes always bought, and wore until the soles were so thin that he could tell where he was in Ankh-Morpork on a foggy night by the feel of the cobbles. Here I am, tottering back and forth while I'm talking. Anyways, this is just something you'll have to practice to get more of the hang of if it doesn't come naturally to you. And as always, record yourself so you can listen to the changes you're making with it and to listen to the differences. There are all sorts of extra qualities to consider, if you like, because you are going to be changing your voice. You may decide that you want to switch to a different cadence or rhythm to the way that you speak. You may decide to make your voice more raspy, or even maybe a little musical when you speak. You may make your voice smoother, if you like, or maybe a bit harsher and stronger sounding. You You probably should avoid a more throaty speech. However, it doesn't tend to sound particularly good. Now, I don't know if any of these is particularly interesting for anybody for me to explain through. For myself, I didn't change any of these properties in my final voice, but I did use a raspy voice for quite a while and found that it wasn't right for me. Like I said, if anybody wants me to elaborate on anything, please let me know. I will gladly add supplemental videos to help demonstrate and explain things if necessary. And before we're done, I did want to bring up what happened when I talked to that voice therapist, because it was quite interesting. When she came in to find me, she looked at me and my wife where we were sitting, the only seats visible from the hallway she came down. She then called my name and looked around at the rest of the waiting room, only to realize it was empty other than us. She looked confused for a moment, so I told her I was Mara and got up to follow her. It took her a moment to realize I was who she was looking for to talk to. I had to confirm that yes, I'm trans, and I've trained myself to use this voice and so on before switching to my old voice to show her the difference. She then decided to start the testing. It's always fun for me to confuse people or have them not believe that I'm trans. Anyways, I hope this guide has been helpful, at least to get you started on your voice journey. Please let me know if there's anything I should elaborate on, and don't forget to drink lots of water. Anyways, talk to you all later. Bye!